Okay, so first of all, for the sake of people that may not know, when we talk about climate action plan, so there are those detailed and strategic framework for measuring, planning, and reducing greenhouse gas emission and related climate impact. So each party to the Paris Agreement, where they were required to. Okay, we have the Paris Agreement, which is a legal binding international treaty on climate change that was adopted by 196 parties at the UN Climate Change Conference COP21 in Paris, France in 12 December 2015. So each parties to this Paris Agreement they were required to establish an NDC. NDC is nationally determined contribution, a climate action plan to cut emission and adapt to climate impact. So this this Paris Agreement, countries establish an enhanced transparent framework, which which is known as the ETF. So with this ETF, starting in 20, that will be starting in 2024, countries will have to report transparency on their actions, on their climate change actions that have taken place in the past years, and their progress in climate change mitigation, adaptation measures, and the support they've provided or have received from other countries. So we know that Nigeria, like many parts of the world, is experiencing climate change. In particular, the country is becoming warmer. Various studies shows that the annual and seasonal timescale indicates a significant positive increase in Nigeria in temperature in Nigeria. So Nigeria is one of the countries that is really affected with climate change due to our activities, due to human activities like burning of fossil fuels, cutting down of trees, burning firewood, pollution, erosion. All those things are the factors that affect our climate here in Nigeria. So oil and gas. Okay, so we have the energy transition plan. As I mentioned, this energy transition plan happened. It was brought about by our former His Excellency President Buhari. He announced this transition plan in August 2022. It's this in ETP. Oh, sorry. So this ETP is Nigeria's commitment to carbon neutrality in 2060. So greenhouse gases are the leading cause of climate action, which I had mentioned. The energy transition plan is to achieve net zero by 2060. Considered in our planned policy scenarios, required significant international support. So this energy transition plan cuts across across five key sectors: power, cooking, oil and gas, transportation, and our industries. Just within these five scopes, 65% of this our emission are of this 65% of this scope affects our climate. 65% of this scope affects our climate. We have the key objective of an energy transition plan. Yes, we have lifting 100 million Nigerians out of poverty and driving economic growth. When we talk about energy transition, we look at clean energy, and we know how important and how useful these energy systems can help Nigerians, especially people living in the remote areas and do not have access to electricity. These remote areas, most of them do not have electricity because they are not connected to the grid, or somehow the federal government cannot go in there due to bad roads and all of that to connect them to electricity. So this bringing in this transition plan and then providing these energy systems which are in these places will help the economic growth of the communities. We talk about bringing in modern energy systems to full population, as I mentioned, like we have the mini grid systems, we have the solar home systems and other energy systems. Managing the expected long-term job loss in the oil sector due to the reduced global fossil fuel demand, playing a leadership role for Africa by promoting a fair, inclusive, and equitable energy transition in Africa that will include gas as a transitional fuel. So we have streamlining existing and new government-related energy transition initiatives. So this graph this graph shows um, sorry. Okay, so we have this graph that shows um power the five key sectors, which is our power sector, transportation sector, oil and gas, cooking, and industry. So this graph shows that transition away from diesel gen, which acts for bulk of current for bulk of our current generation um capacity reduced by 2050. We we will reduce in 2050. Then looking at the transportation sector, the emission decreased by 97 approximately, okay, approximately 97% due to uptake of our electric vehicles. Then we have cooking. We consider replacement of traditional firewood, kerosene, fuel to achieve our SDG 7. SDG 7 stands for the clean, reliable, and affordable energy. Then we look at the oil and gas sector. Emission will probably decrease, primarily driven by global response to climate change. Okay, so this graph also shows the energy mix. Yeah, it shows the energy mix from 1990 to 2019. Yeah. So as seen in the graph, renewable energy renewable energy and gas have significant change in over 10 years as estimated here. So it also shows that with the right mix, energy mix and innovation, the solar energy industry and renewable energy industry in Nigeria will increase and carbon emission will significantly reduce, achieving our nationally determined contribution objective of diversifying energy sources to low carbon systems. So we also look at the focus of the energy transition plan to green jobs by diversifying the economy, talk about the just transition projecting to net zero trajectory. Net zero, when we talk about net zero, we look at achieving no clean energy, purely renewable system, no burning of fossil fuels, no, because as we all know, those are the driving force of our greenhouse gases emission, and that's one of the causes of our climate change. Talk about sustainable waste recycling, especially plastics, where we know that plastic they can then non-degradable. They can't decay. So we use once we use materials like plastic, it's always advised to recycle them. Look at clean cooking, providing a healthy environment, and cutting down of trees to support burning of fire, because in the villages the majority of the people they have this adage that says that it is the food from firewood that is sweeter. The food from firewood tastes much different from the ones we prepare using gases and the likes. But most times some of these people do not know that even when it is true or it may be true, that particular act is damaging our environment, our ecosystem. So we look at driving economic development while mainstreaming the issues of gender. Conclusion. So we are committed to transforming our climate actions into results by turning international discussions into pragmatic steps. We should not just talk about it every time, say, okay, clean energy or no use no burning of fossil fuels and all of that. We should also take practical steps. We should also make efforts to to contribute apart from just saying to act by not doing the things that would damage our climate change. Thank you. So I don't know if you have any questions to ask.
Okay, we'll be open to receiving questions. Thanks so much, Alban. For very detailed presentation. Thanks for your submission. Thanks for your time, details that you brought into the conversation. So, question, I don't know if anyone has any question, because that will form the base of what we talk about as we list to, because I'm looking at your summation as it relates to the energy transition plan for the nation. And this with a focus to Nigeria, which we need to stress.
Yes.
And then again, which I also need to also mention that for those, for our, other colleagues that are not from Nigeria, I think in the light of what we have to even talk about this discourse, is an area you also want to take a look at what exactly is happening in your client, and then be able to be sure that whether Nigeria is the one doing the catch-up or whether where you are, they are the one that are doing the catch-up. You get what I mean? So what it now means is that for you and for what you do, what you represent, it now provides that forum where you can now position, knowing fully well that there is a direction that our country is going to go next. So I'm saying all of that to say that just to touch on what Imagine, thanks so much for this summation. What she talked about, she talked about the fact that there is one key, tool, which is our national development contribution that we are looking at.
National determined contribution.
Determined contribution that we are looking at is the energy transition plan, and that is what she brought, into this conversation. Which I know somebody, which is the person is probably there's someone that spoke some 2 sections ago. I think it's Fahud, if I'm not mistaken. There is what's the name? I know I picked the name like that, in the conversation. That the person, is he said he's probably into renewable thing in the now. He's a sustainability person. And then part of what he's doing is actually influenced by what this presentation from Malcolm. And in particular, let me just pick, one of the slides of what she shared, just, to be able to give us a perspective of what we're looking at. Now, the country want to transit to clean energy by the year 2050, in the light of, the commitment that the country has, and Nigeria, which is what, what influenced, the Climate Change Act that was passed in Nigeria in particular, sometime in 2021. To say, in that act, it also spells out, the plan of the country that by the year 2060, we must have reduced our carbon emission as a country by more than half, and then keep our global, temperature to be below 1.5 degrees Celsius. So all of that is now to say, for the energy transition, it's now discovered that 65% of our total emission actually comes from 4 industries. 65% of our entire emission as a nation. And largely of those 65% is from the transport sector. That's probably this from, I'm just, picking from not one slide, probably maybe the second slide of, yeah. Yeah. And the transport industry has an emission of about 43 metric tons of carbon emission, carbon dioxide equivalent. So this is huge. So to say if we are going to transit as a nation, we need to pay attention to what is happening in the transport sector. Because what this picture is suggesting that we are, a lot that can be avoided, a lot of, emission that can be avoided is happening in the transport sector. And it's not strange because in a country like Nigeria, mass transit is scarce. And that's why it's until when, sometime in May that, the government of the nation removed this fuel subsidy, that's when it now became apparent to everyone that we need to now be looking at alternative, source of, energy, which is where, because of the removal of the fuel subsidy, everybody is now shifting to, probably the CNG, the CNG gas. To now say CNG powered vehicles, is the closest that they can even say, we should shift to now. But it doesn't have to be until when that subsidy was removed before we start talking about it. So what it now means is this: for us in the social sector, for what we do, in this conversation as relates to sustainability and sustainability related issues, it's important that we know what exactly is happening and where we need to put our voice in the light of how we are engaging not just the public sector, also how we are engaging the private sector regarding the change that has happened. Because, when the climate change act was passed in 2021, nobody knew that fuel subsidy is going to be removed in May 2023. So meaning that this Nigerian, energy transition plan has also been since 2021. To say this is what we are looking at, and that's why in 2022 we're talking about, the gas plan as a country, to say why we are using fossil fuel and we keep using fossil fuel and emission, there's a lot of emissions that is being happening from, fossil fuel and exploration of oil. Then the country also needs to make a proactive move, in our transit. So, and that's why this transport sector is contributing 43, metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. So, after that sector, following to that is cooking. To say household in Nigeria, 40 million, metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent is what is being, consumed. Emission that is coming from cooking, meaning that what I think Chibuzo was the one that talked earlier, that she is in the renewable space, and then before Fahud now talked about the fact that he's also doing a lot of education around this energy transition thing. So meaning that for us on this call, we need to, whatever we are doing, we need to also be looking at how we need to stretch in collaborating, because the next focus will be in this area where problem is, because the attention of the country is going to be shifted so that, everybody will find in the light of, our mitigation efforts, beyond our adaptation, strategy as a nation. And that's not even to say that, we are not doing a lot in adaptation, but I also like to, make it clear to people, so that we don't overbloat adaptation beyond what it's supposed to be. Because adaptation in the real sense is actually a catch-up strategy. And the funny thing about adaptation an adaptation strategy in addressing climate change is that you cannot predict. You can adapt to what you are seeing now. You can adapt to what you see the next one, because what you are going to adapt to in the next moment is not predictable. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. And that's why we need to also be clear about what exactly, when we talk about adaptation strategy, without prejudice to the fact that yes, we need it in the short run, but it's to say that ultimately mitigation is where we should be focusing on. Because most times, when companies, that's those in the private sector now, talks about adaptation, part of what they are doing is also to, a bit of it is some, what is called greenwashing. To say they never even meant what they are saying. They are just saying what they are saying for you to, just hear, and then for you to be excited about the fact that they have, a plan in addressing, our carbon emission, but they don't really have any plan. So, and we, when we are in the conversation of this nature, where we talk like this, we need to be clear about what exactly is it are we adapting to, so that we can now know that ultimately mitigation, if we have to mitigate it by all means. So that's it. So I don't know if there's any question in the chat box. If there's any question, I don't know. I can't see any question from my hand. So the other thing I want to touch on is so while we are looking at collaborating, we are looking at, and then again to now say, just like what I think this person talked about it, from Ghana, Steve Dali, that talked from Ghana, did mention that also Chibuzo mentioned something in that nature, that irrespective of your background, whatever it is your background, do not consider yourself to be disadvantaged by having the pedigree or the background that you have. In fact, it gives you an edge. The fact that your background is different from those who have, probably environmental or the sciences background that can really connect, in the real sense of it. So you should don't see yourself as disadvantaged, but stay where you are, and then look from your angle and see how you can, add value, so that society can be grateful in the light of what you are doing, and for what is happening in your environment. So, but just to add, one more thing I want to add in this conversation is also as it relates to why we are talking about the energy transition, which has been addressed by Iman submission. There is also another perspective, which is as it relates to the carbon, market, scheme, the carbon market scheme. What that really entails is, to now say that Nigeria as a country is also looking at developing a carbon market of some sort, meaning that those who are contributing, those who keep emitting, without caution, those who keep emitting without any strategy for sustainability. Because what it means is this: when the Climate Change Act in Nigeria was passed in November 2021, the obligation and the expectation in that act is that every company, whether you are private or you are public sector, you should now have a desk. It's now mandatory that every private sector, public sector, as so long as you have 50 staff and above in Nigeria, you should now have a separate desk, which you will term sustainability desk. Sustainability desk. And the expectation from that desk is this: that you should now be tracking your carbon emission and your carbon footprint as an organization. Keep tracking it, and while you are tracking it, at the end of the year, you'll be making a report to the institution, that's the Ministry of Environment now. You'll be making a return to say this is what you are doing, and this is what, say for example, last year 2021, this is the extent of the direct emission that you made, maybe scope 1 direct emissions. This is the extent of what you emitted. Scope 2 emissions, that's the emissions that are not within your direct control as an organization. This is the extent to which you emitted. And then scope 3, as it relates to your supply chain. Now, this is the extent to which you emitted. That's what you did in 2021. Now, 2022, you are now going to be reporting. And the expectation is that when you keep reporting like that, you are tracking your footprint. Meaning, if you have spent so much, say, for example, your direct emission, which is, your purchase of fossil fuel, PMS, AGO for your, generator and all of that. If what you consume in 2021 is lower than what you consume in 2022, it will signal that you are, transiting. You are reducing your carbon footprint. You are reducing. So that's the strategy. So meaning that this act has already been done, passed in Nigeria. As we speak now, sometime in June of this year, 2023, in particular, 26th of June, 2023, the International Sustainability Standard Board passed, a standard that is called Scope 1, standard. That's IFRS, Scope 1, S1, Scope 1, and Scope 2 that was passed in 26th of June, 2023. And the expectation is this, that companies will now be required to track their carbon footprints as an organization. You need to now be tracking your carbon footprint and reporting. So it's now a reporting standard now. So meaning that typical companies will be beyond their reporting, where they prepare their financial reports, they just have, whether they made profit or they made loss. Beyond that now, from 1st January 2024, accounts that will be ready, prepared for 2025. That is to say, 2025 account that will be reported, that will be covering 1st January 2024 to 31st December 2024, will now be expected that companies need to now be reporting what is called sustainability reporting. And what sustainability reporting means, simply means, bottom line, is that beyond what you are declaring as your financial report, which suggests whether you made profit, you made loss as a company, you should also be reporting on your contribution to, the planet. If you have made so much profit by virtue of your financial report, which is what you have been doing over the years, what about the environment? Is the environment better off or they are worse off? So it's now expected that companies need to be tracking their emission. And in Nigeria in particular, for the financial service industry, for example, Access Bank is doing a lot, massive work in that regard to say, they are taking the lead in that industry. And then a company maybe like Dangote Industries, I think so they are doing a lot of things in that regard. Now, I made mention of all of that to say that we should know what is happening, as for what we do, even though we are in the social sector. But it helps us to be able to now leverage what, goal 16 is, goal 17, which is the partnership for the goal. How we now need to know what is expected of organization and how we can now ensure that we are able to leverage partnership for the goals as relates to, those things. So now say, if companies are also going to now be looking at how they are going to be tracking their emission and their carbon footprint, then you, operating in the social sector, you need to be aware of what is happening so that when you want to appeal, to them, to be able to support them in that transition, because for a lot of them is probably a new terrain. It's a new terrain which there's a lot of struggle in that regard now, which is why even the Financial Reporting Council in Nigeria recently, I think that's even sometime earlier this month, made a call. What is the call for? The call for those who will be, they are expecting companies to come forward to be classified as early adopters, meaning that if you have been reporting, preparing sustainability reports for the past 2 years, you can now approach Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria to say they should, consider you as an early adopter. So, meaning that what you have been doing as an organization will be like a template for other organizations to be able to take a cue from. So it's not going to be business as usual. A lot of things is changing, and that's why we are having a conversation like this, so that for those who are not in this climb, probably in Nigeria, and I know a lot of people are from other ways, that you should now be paying attention of to know what the policy direction or climate policy direction of your country, which direction are they going, so that from where you have seen or you have heard that Nigeria is going, you can bet that the next thing that you see your country going is that they will probably be going the route that Nigeria has probably taken, those kind of things. So, and that's what is now bringing me to the carbon market scheme, that which is the second scheme or framework that Nigeria as a country is building, and it's even also a pilot. It's more like a leading, early, early adopter in that regard, to say what Nigeria is going to be doing in that space is going to be a template for other African countries. As it relates to what they want to do in that regard is what they call cap and trade, meaning that's an organization. If you are emitting so much emission, you will have a limit, a cap they will give you, that this is the much you should be emitting. So if you are now emitting beyond that much, what it now means is that you'll be paying a fee of some sort for emitting beyond what you are permitted to emit. And that's why it's called cap and trade. So meaning that for other companies that has so much that they can emit, but they are emitting so little, so they will have a credit of some sort that they can now, it can now become a market that those who are emitting below what is necessary can exchange for those who are emitting above what is necessary, and value the exchange in that regard. So all of this is just to an heads up for us to know what exactly is happening, and then for us to now, as people operating in the social space, to know how we can position and how we can appeal, to both public and private organizations, and leveraging on the goal 17 of the United Nations Sustainability Goals. I hope you'll be able to, do justice to, our session. Hello, can you hear me? Hello, I want to be sure I'm not all by myself.
No, I can hear you. What was the question, please?
Okay. No. I wanted to be sure that we are not going beyond our allotted time. So, and I also wanted to be sure that if there is any question or any request for clarification, so we can throw more light in the light of the few submissions that we have made. Because we're just trying to make sure that we are able to touch a number of things. So, but it would be a good time if you have a question, clarification that you want to get in the light of these particular, some of the things that we talked about, the submissions from Imal Bond. And Imal Bond, thanks so much for that amazing presentation. Amazing work that you've done there. Thanks so much. Well done.
Okay, so thank you very much.
Okay, no question. So if there is no question, I think it should be nice if we are to if we are to public call it, over. I can't see my earlier post. Okay, great. Okay, great.
Evening, sir.
Okay, I thought you wanted to say something.
No, I'm waiting for time.
Go ahead. Sorry?
I'm waiting for my